Yeah, so there was a question on the artist. I think Mr. Chikupe, yes, you have demonstrated or have pointed out that it's important that we harvest the creativity of the creative people. I think that's something that we agree with, and it's one of the sectors that we are looking at as government as part of the diversification strategy is really to try and see how can we create content in Namibia that is going to that we can sell outside, and therefore our creative people how can they be assisted to exploit these opportunities, because we believe that we are uniquely positioned as a country to create some more creative material that can be sold outside, be in the form of film or be in other ways. So that's one focus area, and I believe we have some work to do there, and so we have to work with the creative people. But I think your question really is about how do we get enough money from our mineral resources and natural resources. I think that's a question that we should all debate. What is enough or what is not enough? And come to a conclusion whether what we are getting from mines, for instance, can we get more? Probably can we still get more. So that's something that we should continue to revisit as we engage the investors that come to the region. For instance, let me take just give you one example, because it's important that we should also have a context to this discussion. So some time ago, I was part of the team that was doing a study on how much Namibia gets from the diamond sector. That's about maybe 10 years ago. If you add up the whole cake, Namibia was getting close to about 70% of that whole cake from the diamond sector. The question is that enough, or that is not enough? So, but we will leave that to see whether it's not, that is not enough or that is enough. Bearing in mind also that when you are when you have people who have capital and know-how investing in your country, they also need to get some benefits from that thing. So is it 29% enough? Because we are also competing with others. Or maybe we can get the whole 90% and they can only be left with 10%. But you are in a competitive space where others also have the resources that you have. In fact, some have made better resources than you. I always get amazed by Namibians who believe that, apart from the oil that we still have to harvest one day, that is still being processed. Because we believe that we've got so much resources. Yeah. So we don't realize that when it comes to mining, for instance, the kind of deposits we have, first of all, very small. Secondly, quality is not one of the best. If I take gold, for instance, it's important that we put these things into perspective. We used to produce about 2 tons of gold a year, compared to others who are like South Africa who are producing. And during their peak days, I think they were producing more than 120 million tons of gold. So we need to put these things into perspective. If I look at copper, we no longer have copper. We had that mine that closed down I think about 5 or 7 years ago. The 2D1, it had a lifespan of about 5 years. But the deposit, yes, it was good, but it was not very significant. We have significant uranium resource. I think that we should acknowledge. Yeah, can we get more from uranium? Probably yes, but it's also not the best quality. So it's important that Namibians understand this, because sometimes we have this illusion that we have so much. Yeah. So and then we can get so much. So it's important to understand these things, and the young people I want to do proper research so that you can also educate us and your fellow students about this kind of the kind of resource that they can here. Yes, I think the question is good. It's important. We have some resources, some fishing resources. Start to ask these critical questions. Are we getting enough from our fish? Are we getting enough from our diamonds? But it must be research. It must be informed by research. It mustn't just be informed by emotions. So we must do proper research, and maybe the civil society can help us do this kind of research to see what's a reasonable amount of money that we can derive from the resource that we have, bearing in mind that those that also that we invite to come and help us to exploit these resources also need to get a share of it. Let me move on to the next one. I think Jason or SEMAS, that's something that's taking up a lot of resources from government, and that's something that we are still continuing to try and see what's the best way of generating some savings from there. We have done the assessment. We have identified some areas where possible savings can be found. But unfortunately, this is not something that government can just decide unilaterally. This is where we need to cut. Unfortunately, we have to negotiate with the union. That conversation is not an easy one. So the reform is going on, but it's a bit slow because we will have to convince our other stakeholders that this is where we need to make some savings. But it's continuing. The difficult one is the wage bill. Again, this is also something that together with SEMAS, that is managed by the Prime Minister's office. They have done some assessment as to where areas where we can make some savings. Their conclusion was not very strong, so that's something that still has to be, that assessment still has to continue to see how best do you achieve that objective of reducing the wage bill. But I think there has been some small wins in the sense that the government has not really been hiring more people. The policy of what is called compensatory recruitment, I believe is helping us in a way that the numbers have gone down slightly. In the sense that if you want to create a new position, you have to give up a new one. But we need more than that. The restructuring of SOEs, again, we are continuing with the strengthening of our SOEs. We're not moving as fast as we want because again there are many other stakeholders that are involved. We are strengthening the compliance of SOEs, make sure that they comply with all they submit their business plans, they are approved, the financial statements, and this is a challenge for many SOEs. They don't submit their financial statements on time. The law is that 6 months after the end of the financial year, they have to submit financial statements. So there is some slowness in this process, and that's something we are managing, and we are reminding them that it's important that you know what is happening in your organizations, and therefore you can only know what is happening in your organizations if you have proper financial statements that are audited and are approved by the board and the shareholders. So it's improving slowly, but we have to do more work. We have been crafting what is called the ownership policy. You may have heard us talking about this, especially during the budget, the tabling of the budget. So this is a policy that we have now more or less finalized. It has been presented to the cabinet. So the next stage is to consult the key stakeholders. I believe the civil society will also then be consulted. What is and what is in the ownership policy is really to say, why should government own public enterprises? So and therefore what's the objective? And how should we own it? So how do we manage it if we own public enterprises? So I think that once we have agreed on that policy framework, we then start to ask the question: does this fit in the framework, or do we have some SOPs that do not fit in the ownership framework? So then we can start to further restructure. Then there was a question from the gentleman from the informal sector was asking very formal questions. Is he still there? Oh, it is behind. Very good, very good, very good. Yes, you are correct to say that Namibia spends quite a lot of money on education. In fact, if you look at the kind of money that we spend on education as a percentage of the country's total income, it's very, very, very high. We're spending close to 9% of GDP. Others are spending close to about 4% of GDP on education. But a significant part of that goes to CSOs, right? Goes to administration, goes to salaries. So I think it talks about a number of things. One, we cannot continue to put a lot more money into education because what we are putting in already it's quite high compared to our peers. We are probably in the top 5 when it comes to education spending in the world, not in Africa, in the world. So the question we have to start asking ourselves is, where do we generate savings so that we can redirect some of the money that we are spending on salaries on other things, including materials, including the training of teachers. So that's a question we have to ask ourselves. So where do we have inefficiencies in the system? And this cuts across all our social sector, health, education. Compared to our peers, we are spending a whole lot on these sectors. So the question I want us to debate, including the civil society, is that where do we find savings so that we can redeploy these savings still in the education sector, but now going to the other areas that we support? I think that's a question we have to ask ourselves. We know there's a backlog, for instance, when it comes to infrastructure for early childhood development. Minister of Education has to take over these programs from the Minister of Gender, but infrastructure is an issue. So we probably have to give them a bit more money now to build more classrooms. But I think going forward, the question we have to ask ourselves is really, how do we gain more savings within this sector so that we can also prop up the other areas of education and health that need resources? You were asking about the youth budget. Well, I think it's not that Namibia doesn't spend enough on the youth. When we say 28% of the budget goes to education, this is youth. This is youth. So it's not only what it goes to the Minister of Youth. So a number of things that we do is actually for the youth. But you seem to be saying that government must have a specific budget line for youth employment. Well, what is important, I think, is to understand that government cannot create employment. So government has to create a conducive environment for the private sector to create employment. Because that's the only sustainable way. Because government funding comes from the private sector. So if you don't have the private sector, you will not have resources to fund government expenses. So that's how we need to understand it. But it's important that government spends money on training people so that we have a productive workforce that is able to work in the private sector so that we can create more wealth and create more access for government to help with the provision of social services and other public goods that government have to support, including roads and other kind of infrastructure. So yes, unemployment is a serious social problem. We have to tackle it, but we have to tackle it by strengthening the economy, diversifying the economy, attracting more economic or creating more economic activities so that we can reduce the unemployment rate. It's not an easy thing. It needs all of us to work together. Yes, government has to play its part, but all of us really need to work together. I think the issue of graduate teachers applying to become members of the defense force, I think there's a coordination problem there in my view. So you can train more teachers, but you only need a number of teachers in the country. And unfortunately, there are only few employers, and the biggest one is government. So I think the question we need to ask ourselves: the number of teachers are we training? Are we training and are we creating an oversupply of teachers? And if that is the case, how do we make sure that we reduce the number of people that are training? Because there's only one employer, and the one employer will have enough teachers at one point. In fact, at this point, we are more or less, I think we probably have reached that saturation point. But there are so many institutions that are now training teachers. Do we need to train more teachers? Maybe the question is not more, and not yes. So I think that we need to look at that part, because if we overtrain people that we are not able to employ, we actually wasting resources. So I think yes, I agree with you. There's a need for coordination. How many people do we need to train? But it means that conversation is a conversation between government, it's a conversation between the Council of Higher Education, it's a conversation between institution of higher learning. Those are the people who are admitting these people. Yeah, it's the same for nurses. How many nurses do we have to train per year? So in my view, it looks like we actually training more nurses than what we can absorb. So that needs to be coordinated. Yeah, the chief planner is here. It's going to help us to maybe bring all those stakeholders together to coordinate the problem. There was a question from my sister who was asking about the basic income grant. I believe Graham has talked about what government has implemented now. That the food bank has been converted into what is called the conditional basic income grant. I think the jury is still out. I think it's a debate. The jury is still out whether. So I think that debate is there. I would want somebody who can convince me that's what we need. Because there are concerns that it may have pros and cons. And unfortunately, I haven't seen any country that implemented fully yet. So I want it to be taken to that country so that I can learn from that country. So I think the intentions are good. How you're going to do it, I see you shaking your head. So I want you are a young person, so I want you to do proper research and come and convince with facts. Yeah, with facts. So let's have that debate, and then let's convince each other that yes, this is what is going to work. Because I think that debate is still not concluded. You have talked about we are only here for TICOs. I think our time is very limited, so we are very stretched. So if you don't think this was going to be a productive discussion, we will not have come here. Because I will speak for myself. Most of the time I'm late, and therefore the reason why I'm here is because I believe that this conversation is very, very important. Otherwise, I will not have wasted our time. So we are here. So we have said before, we are here to listen, and there's those ideas that we can implement. We will definitely implement that, but we will also need to understand that there are competing needs that we will have to look at. It's not we're not only going to look at the list that is going to come from here, we're going to come to look at the list that is coming from other people. The other lady who is doing a wonderful job in Kaltura, so we applaud you for what you're doing there. And I want to understand where the failure is, because I think if you look at government is doing problems almost every part of the test. Yeah. So the pensioners, the pension scheme, the orphans is a scheme for OBC. There's also a scheme for poor families, and you used to work on this agenda. For poor families who've got children going to school, who get support from government. So if there are people who are falling through the cracks, it's probably in the implementation program, and it's probably also maybe the system is not capturing it. But I think in terms of the programs are there, and maybe the issue is where are people falling into cracks, and maybe that's what we need to hear. It's not the level of programs. So I think we want to hear why are these programs not working? Because the government has tried to create programs that are actually supporting vulnerable people. So you need to help us to understand why are they not being caught by this net. So I want to hear more from you. Maybe during the breakout, you can come to me so that you can tell me where are we losing these people? Because we need to catch them with this net that I think the gentleman from NPC was asking about industries. I think I talked about industry, but we also wanted to get more clarity from Graham. So I believe that's for Graham. And the disability colleague, we hear you cry. Yes, well, I think the government has got specific interest in supporting people with disability in one way or another. I can't promise you that the ministry is still going to, there will still be a minister or a department, in fact, it's not even a department because we have a deputy minister that is going to be there. I'm not the appointing authority, I don't create it, but I think I can say without a fear of contradiction that yes, government definitely values that program, and it really wants to do things that support people with disability. The gentleman who talked about BTCs, yes, we can agree with you that the government needs to continue to invest in BTCs, and I don't think there's a debate there. If you see what government is building, and I'm not saying it's not enough, I mean it's enough. We are building BTCs everywhere. So we're building one in Ketmans, we're building one in Korikas, we're building one in Kuremkuru. So we are upgrading the Okakarara one, the Kobabas one is upgraded. So I don't think there's a debate there. So to say that I think the government does not realize the importance of BTC, I don't think you are being fair there. So maybe the question is this enough? I also want to understand why the BTC students grew. And grew is very, very good BTC. In fact, it's one of the best in the country. I visited several times. Why those students in the room are not able to benefit from NASFAP? Because people from who are going to BTC actually do qualify to get loans from NASFAP, not just like the people who are going to UNAM and their NASFAP. So maybe again, it's not the fact that there's a lack of a program, it's why are they falling, why are they not being caught by this program? So I think that's what we need to identify. Because they get loans just like anybody else who's going to the tertiary institution that qualifies. Let me maybe the DG will want to say something. As we said earlier on, a significant part of that goes to the remuneration of teachers or the payment of salaries and things like that. But again, as I said earlier, we are one of those countries that are spending a great deal of resources on education. So the question we really have to ask ourselves, and the risk of repeating what I said is, can we look at all those problems that we have in education? How do we redirect some of those resources? The question I was asking the Minister of Education, for instance, 33 years after independence, do we still have to spend the same amount of money on adult education? Or can we redirect that resource to some of the education programs that need resources? Material, that is now books, textbooks, ICT infrastructure. So maybe that's where we need to redirect those the kind of resources that we are spending on that. Should we allow, for instance, NAMCOR to offer a master's degree? Yeah, because again, this is money that is being spent on education. NAMCOR was set up to help students who are improving their primary so secondary qualifications. But they are offering all kinds of programs, including a master's degree now. They are not competing with universities. These are the questions that I want the researchers to really ask. Because I think these questions will help us to tackle the real issue that we need to tackle. Because if the first step in solving the problem is really understanding the problem, and once you understand the problem, then you can address it. So I think the young researchers, I want you to focus on these things and say, okay, these are the kind of problems that we have in education. Do we need all of this, or do we need to do away with some of them so that we can redirect the resources that we have in education? The gentleman wanted to ask about the stadium. Yes, I share the passion that we have on sports, because I believe a healthy nation, it's a nation that that is able to allow its young people to practice sports and all other activities, including the creative sector that Mr. Shekute has talked about. Yes, we have made some resources available like that for the upgrading of the stadium. Unfortunately, that did not happen, because you may recall that we wanted to co-host the African Cup of Nations in 2027, I think. So FIFA had to come, not FIFA, but the AFCON had to come and do some audits. So the ministry could proceed with the upgrading of the stadium, because that audit was outstanding. So I believe the audit is now done. And we have again made money available. I think in the current budget we are close to over 100 million, I think 160. That's around 100 for the upgrading of the stadium. So hopefully it will now be done. As I said, not every problem is a money problem. So we will have to encourage the ministry to fast track the process. But the money is available, so I think let's all support the ministry to ensure that is carried out, or the upgrade work is carried out, so that our girls and boys can practice at home. The industrialized economy, yes, we believe that's the way to go. No country has actually become richer without industrializing. So the kind of poverty that we're talking about is basically the fact that we don't have industries. So the DG has talked about the diversification strategy that we're trying to pursue, the new areas of growth that we are trying to nurture. That's all part of the diversification strategy, so we can create more industries that can employ people, that can pay better salaries, and therefore that's really the key to, first of all, to industrialization, and secondly to improve and reduce poverty. Mr. Dembers, I fully agree with you. The speed of execution is something that we need to improve as government, and maybe as Namibia in general. We do slow to implement things. I think that's one of our challenges. The implementation of the housing policy, I believe this is something that has been a partnership between the ministry and I see Anna is there. She's one of she's one of those who are working on this the housing policy. So I'm happy that the team has now delivered. We actually discussed the housing policy last week in the cabinet committee, and hopefully once it's approved, we are going to speed up the implementation process. I am one of those who who believe that we should really invest more in creating more housing opportunities, so that we can help people with some basic amenities. So we need to fast track that process. I fully agree with you. Thank you for supporting NAMRA. Please continue to support NAMRA. We are supporting NAMRA in many ways. So when they are criticized, but also want the civil society to stand up and say, yeah, those who are not paying tax must pay tax, because we can only help you to redirect resources to the areas where you think resources need to be directed if we collect those resources from those who have paid. So let's support them. So at the moment they're getting a lot of support from ourselves and in other international communities. But in any other support, even moral support, and I think that's at least that you can give moral support is I've already talked about the Minister of, as part of our priorities going forward. Health is definitely one of it. The universal health coverage is there. It's part of the program that the Minister of Health has put in place, or has actually presented as a program that is funding. So when we're looking at the funding of the Ministry of Health, it's also going to address that that concern. I believe on the issue of accountability, we've already talked about it, and I think the debate is not really that whether there are Namibians that are poor. I think the issue is that the government has created a social safety program. So I want to understand whether that safety net that government has is it not enough in terms of the levels. I think that's where the discussion should take place. Because as I said, if we don't identify the problem, we can have general discussions which will not be helpful. We need to go to the root cause of the problem. Is the problem not comprehensive enough? In fact, I believe that government has too many problems that need to be coordinated. Yeah. So I think it might be it's a coordination problem. So that's what I want us to discuss. We are not oblivious to the fact that a lot of Namibians are not having enough. We also live in those communities, so we see the problems there. I go to Calcutta very well. So don't leave this room with the impression that you don't know what is happening. I get my haircut. I was there on Saturday in Calcutta. So I interact with a lot of Calcutta people. So please, but I think what is important is really to understand that where are the problems not being effective? That way, I think we can start to solve them. I live there and I live in the region.